Hello, everyone, and welcome to In Sarah's Tent. I'm Sandy, and Nancy is here with me to discuss Torah. Hello, Nancy.
Hi, Sandy. Hi, everybody.
We are continuing the story of Abram. He's still Abram, his name hasn't been changed. And we will be looking in Genesis chapter 16 tonight. We're just going to read the first 6 verses because there is a lot to discuss just in those 6 verses. And Nancy, if you would get us started and read those verses, and then we'll come back and have the discussion.
All right, will do. So, chapter 16, verses 1 through 6. And Sarai, the wife of Avram, had not borne a child to him. She had a maidservant who was Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said to Abram, "Indeed, now restrained me has Hashem from giving birth. Come now to my maidservant. Perhaps I will be built up through her." And Abram acceded to the voice of Sarai. And she took Sarai, the wife of Abram, Hagar, the Egyptian, her maidservant, at the end of 10 years of the dwelling of Abram in the land of Canaan, and she gave her to Abram, her husband, to him as a wife. And he came to Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, she belittled her mistress in her eyes. And so Sarai said to Abram, "This injustice done to me is due to you. It was I who gave my maidservant into your bosom, and when she saw that she had conceived, I was belittled in her eyes. Let Hashem judge between me and between you." And Abram said to Sarai, "Here is your maidservant in your hand. Do to her as is fit in your eyes." And Sarai dealt harshly with her. So Hagar fled from before her.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. There are some several puzzling statements in those few verses that I'd like for us to look at tonight. Just some just strange phrases like Sarai dealing harshly and blaming Abram. And that's just a couple of them that I would like for us to look at tonight. But let's start back at verse 1. And we are introduced to a new person in the Torah, and it's Hagar. So, exactly who is Hagar? And I did a little research on that, and she was a daughter of Pharaoh. And so, how did she come? A daughter of Pharaoh would be when she'd be a princess in Egypt.
Yes.
So, how did she come to be a handmaiden in the household of Abram? And according to, oh, did you have something? Go ahead.
Oh, I thought you were asking me.
Oh, yeah, please. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I would have to check, but didn't we just have them going down to Egypt?
Yes.
So they're coming from Egypt. So this must be somebody new in the household of Sarai and Abram. I would think that she joined their household while they were in Egypt. So why would Pharaoh give his daughter to be a maidservant to somebody who's not even Egyptian? I mean,
Yeah.
that doesn't make very much sense to me.
Yes. And I did find some commentary on that. Remember back when the famine was in the land and Abram and Sarah had to go down into Egypt, and he said, "She's my wife, she's my sister," and Pharaoh took her. And we know how that all ended. And in this commentary or midrash, it says that when Pharaoh saw the miracles on Sarah's behalf when she had been abducted and was in his household, and he saw everything that was happening because of that, he realized how special I think these people were. And he said, it's better she be a servant in their house than a princess in someone else's. So to me, that speaks to the high regard in which Abram and his family were held at that time, that Pharaoh was willing to give his daughter a princess. It would be better for her to be a princess in such an esteemed household than to be a princess in Egypt. So according to that commentary, that's how she came to be a maidservant of Sarah. So yeah, it's that's one of the first strange statements, I think, how a princess comes to be a maidservant. Oh.
And just a little insight to our listeners. Sandy and I write notes ahead of time, and and then share them. And I noticed on this week's notes that we shared, they were almost all questions.
Yes. Yes.
It was not much of our own thoughts as to what's going on. It was more question, 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 question. So
Yes.
this is a unique little passage here.
It is. There's just, like I said, there's just so many odd statements and puzzlements. Well, let's move on to the next strange statement or question that we came up with, which was in verse 2. And Sarah is talking to Abram, and she says they've not had a child. And a couple of episodes back, when Hashem tells Abram that you're going to have many offspring that can't even be counted, and he says, how's that going to be? I mean, I don't even have a child now, and they're already well advanced in years. So in verse 2, Sarah says to Abram, Hashem has restrained me from giving birth. And that created a question for me. Why would she be blaming Hashem? Does Hashem control when people become pregnant, when they don't? Does he decide when a child is going to be born and when not? How do you think, or what do you think, Nancy, why she was saying Hashem had restrained her?
Well, I think you're right. I think that at that time, well, even today, um, we believe that God controls everything.
Right.
And so, but I think it's interesting that if God is in control of everything, and she's saying God hasn't given me a child, but if he's in control of everything and he said he will, then
Yeah.
is she being impatient? Or
Yeah.
and I had a question as to how long it's been since the covenant between the parts.
Mm-hmm.
How long has it been since they've gotten this promise? How long did they wait before they started to get restless and going, hey, it's been a
Yeah.
while and we still
Yeah.
don't have a baby? So yeah, I think that it's kind of a contradiction there. If they think that Hashem is the one who is in control of everything and can give them a baby, then if he says he will, why are they worried about it?
Exactly. And it makes me think we have our time schedule, how we have our life planned out, but God has his own time schedule, and he goes by that. So yeah, it's and the other thing, I was talking with a friend this morning. We were doing a study together, and it's the Bible, the Torah doesn't always give us an indicator of how much time elapses. The way
Right.
it's written, you sometimes can read it through and think just one event happens and then immediately the next event and then the next. But they're in when they're leaving Sinai back over in Exodus, or maybe it's in Numbers, when they're leaving Sinai, when the spies go into the land and spy it out and everything. And then the next, after all of that's dealt with, then it's 38 years later.
Right.
There's these big gaps, and sometimes we don't even know how much how much time has passed. But I was thinking, and here's a question that's, I don't have an answer, but here's another question. about Hashem, she's saying Hashem restrained me from giving birth. Did is it possible Hashem prevented her from having a child earlier so that when Isaac was born, it would be obvious that this was a true miracle because they are well advanced in years. And by this time, probably everyone had given up that they would have a child. So maybe God did delay it so it would not be an ordinary birth. A couple gets married, they have children. But this has got to be a special birth. So it's obvious that Isaac is the chosen child, that the covenant and all those promises are coming through. Just again, speculation on my part, why she would say Hashem has prevented me from giving birth.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Also on verse 2, and this is again a plug for everybody who wants to learn Hebrew. I think there's kind of a play on words here because the place where it says, go to my maidservant, perhaps I will be built up through her, meaning that she will raise the maidservant's child as her own. The word for built up is very, very similar to the word for son, for S-O-N, a son. And so I think maybe that's just a play on words.
Interesting.
It's something that you miss if you are just reading it in English.
Good. Glad you pointed that out because, yeah. And when we start learning Hebrew, we do find those little nuggets all over the place.
Yeah.
So very good. Yeah. And there's something else I wanted to point out in verse 2 is, like you said, she's going to use the handmaid or the maidservant, Hagar, to have a child. And we see this repeated later. Can you think of an episode, Nancy, where we see this happening again?
I do.
Could you tell us, please?
Yes. I see with Rebecca and Leah and their maidservants.
Yeah.
Bilhah and Zilpah. Yeah. That's the same. So it must have been a common practice back then.
Yes, I think so. I think that's so.
And one more thing about verse 2. Again, the Hebrew here. What I read was Avram acceded to the voice of Sarai. So he said, okay. The Hebrew word is Shema, which is to listen and has an understanding of obeying included in it.
Right.
And I think
that's what he did.
Yeah.
Yes,
that's what he did.
He heard her and listened to her and obeyed. He heard you can hear something but not listen. There's a difference. So he heard and he really listened and then he acted on it. So
yeah.
Shall we move on to verse 3?
Yes, I'm done with 2.
And so Sarah took, and this is Nancy pointed out before we started recording, this sentence just kind of doesn't know how to stop. It just keeps going on and on. So we'll kind of shorten it down here. So Sarah gave Hagar to Abram, but the thing that is interesting, I think, in this verse, it specifically says at the end of 10 years of dwelling in the land of Canaan, she gave this. Another question, what is the significance of saying 10 years they've been in Canaan? How does that add to what's happening?
Well, I think one thing, it answers my question, how long has it been since the covenant between the parts?
Okay.
So it's not just something that happens right after that, like the next year. It's been a while. It's been a while.
Yes.
And you had said something like you had read a commentary about what happens if a family doesn't have children after 10 years.
Yes, I was reading that this afternoon, and this commentary says that if a couple has been married when the reference was I probably mispronounced this, the Shulchan Aruch, the Jewish, I think it's a Jewish law book. That was the source that this commentary referenced. And it said if a couple has been together 10 years and have no children, then the husband is obligated, and it used the word obligated, to take a second wife to have children. So maybe that's another reference to the 10 years. They've been together at least 10 years. They may have been together longer than that. I don't know. And so maybe Sarah is aware of this, that, okay, now we've got to do something. So she gave the handmaid just another, maybe another connection. I don't know if it's exactly why these 10 years, it mentions 10 years here, but we know everything in the Torah is there for a reason. So another question we had, why did he say 10 years?
Yeah.
And you made a comment earlier too, or in your notes. I'm looking at your notes now. Are we impatient? I mean, they waited 10 years before doing something. Do you think we think if our computer doesn't boot up in seconds, it's slow. We have to microwave our food because we don't want to wait until, we prepare it and cook it. So 10 years and now, okay, I guess it's time to do something. So
Yeah, I think that our time now, not just our generation, but the generations current, I mean, Sandy and I are older, but the current generation is way, way too much focused on doing things fast.
yeah.
Fast food, you get, I don't know, I could go on and on about nobody has any patience. You buy things already chopped up at the
Yes.
grocery store. You don't even have time to chop it up. You don't buy a head of lettuce, you buy a bag of chopped up lettuce.
Yes.
It's like, come on, take time to chop your own lettuce.
Yes.
Sorry, that's a little rant of mine.
That's
But
okay.
but yeah, I think that at first I thought, well, they weren't very, Sarai was not very patient. But then when I stop and think about it, no, she was very patient. She waited 10 years.
10 years. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Maybe we need to slow down and be a little more patient. It just in every aspect of dealing, like in traffic, there have been times when I'm at the first car at a traffic light and it turns green and instantly somebody is honking behind me. They don't even give me time to get my foot off the brake to go.
Right.
That's how impatient we are these days. Anyway, we will get off that little rabbit trail and get back. But honestly, we don't do that a whole lot, do we? Go down little rabbit trails?
Oh,
I
no,
hope
of course
not.
not.
Okay, so they've been in Canaan 10 years or whatever we want to add, think what that means. And so she gives Hagar to Abram as a wife. Just briefly, I don't think we need to deal with this a whole lot, but I was reading in another translation and it translated it concubine, but the Hebrew word there is Isha, wife. She actually became a second wife, not a concubine, but a wife to him. Okay, in verse 4, Hagar conceives. And because of that, she becomes to feel superior to Sarah and begins to belittle Sarah. And again, going back to commentary that I read earlier, it said that Hagar conceived on her first time with Abram and thought she must be superior to Sarah because Sarah had been with Abram for years and had not born a child. And then she came along and conceived on the first night. So she kind of felt like she must be more righteous or worthy than Sarah and started to belittle Sarah.
And children having children was kind of I don't know if you would call it a status symbol, but
Yeah.
it was um, an honor to have children.
Yes.
And people who didn't have children were embarrassed because Hashem had not given them children. And so
Yeah.
they thought that maybe something was wrong.
Yes.
So having children was maybe in Hagar's eyes put herself on a higher level than
Mm-hmm.
Sarai.
Mm-hmm.
And if you stop and think about it, Hagar is probably a lot younger.
Yes. I hadn't thought of that, but you're probably right.
And maybe along with being young, she might be a little bit immature.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of viewing Sarai as being someone who was willing to share her husband
Mm-hmm.
and and bring Hagar into their family, she, Hagar, viewed herself as better than
Yes.
Sarai. And I think maybe that I haven't read any commentary on this. I don't know how old Hagar is, but I'm just guessing that maybe she's younger and it might just be some immaturity on her part.
Yeah.
And like you said, she was a princess. So maybe
Yes.
she did have a feeling of superiority built
Exactly.
in.
Yes. So for whatever reason, and I think we've come some valid reasons on this, why she felt or she belittled Sarah or made her. I've also read another commentary or another translation that says Sarah became less in the eyes of Hagar. Same idea. Hagar started to feel superior. So, but we see Sarah's reaction to this attitude that Hagar now has towards Sarah, because even though she's now Abram's wife, she's still Sarah's handmaid. That I don't get the impression that that status changed. So
Right.
anyway, so now Sarah has a problem to deal with. My maidservant is acting superior. So in verse 5, she goes to Abram, and here's another puzzling statement for me. So Nancy, shed some light on this. She goes
I don't
to
know if I
Abram
can.
and she says, "The injustice done to me is due to you." Why is she blaming Abram? This
It's
was
all
her,
your fault.
and it was her idea. I'm just that puzzles me. She blamed it. I won't say the word blame, but she said the injustice done to me is due to you. What are your thoughts on that? Why would she put the blame here? I use the word blame again. Why would she accuse Abram that it's his fault?
I have no idea. That just, I, poor Abram. You know, he listened to his wife. He agreed. He said, "Okay, I'll listen and I will do what you say." And I don't know. I can't even. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
But I think, and I don't. This doesn't answer the the particular question. But I do think it's all about Hagar's attitude. It's not the fact that she got pregnant because that was the whole goal
Mm-hmm.
was
That
for
was
her
the
to get
plan.
pregnant. That
Yes.
was the plan. And when Rachel and Leah bring in their maidservants, there's no animosity between the maidservants and the primary wives, the
Right.
third and fourth wife, I guess you would say,
Right.
and the first and second wife, there doesn't seem to be any attitude problems. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's just Hagar's attitude. And I don't know, maybe Abram encouraged it, maybe. I don't know. That's
I
just,
don't know. It's just a strange statement to me that, and yeah, like you said, how did Abram react to this? Um, and she goes on to say, it was I who gave my maidservant into your bosom. Well, she's admitting right there, it was my idea. I instigated this. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was belittled in her eyes. Let Hashem judge between me and between you. And that's another puzzling statement. What's to be judged there? What that whole verse is just is beyond my understanding at this point. So
I agree.
yeah, let Hashem judge between me and between you. So maybe we just leave that one there for now. And
Yeah, I didn't read any commentary that particularly answers our question.
yeah, I'm looking here in our Humash that we have open, and it doesn't address that. So we'll just move on. Maybe it'll give our listeners some and they'll start looking and find an
Yeah.
answer. So okay, and then our last verse we were going to look at tonight is verse 6. And so Abram answers Sarah, and he said to her, here is your maidservant in your hand. Do to her as is fit in your eyes. So Abram is basically saying, you deal with it. It's your maidservant.
Right.
There is a commentary in this, and they're saying Abram's thinking on that was he's saying, to me, she is a wife. I have no right to treat her unkindly, but to you, she is a servant. If she mistreated you, do what you feel is right. And that's according to Radak. So basically, Abram is saying, I can't do anything. She's now a wife to me, but she is your servant. And so he leaves it into Sarah's judgment what to do about this situation.
And so what does she do? It says here.
Well, yeah, this is another perplexing statement. She goes on and says, after Abram has said, you deal with it as it seems fit to you. So how did Sarah deal with it? At the end of verse 6, Sarah dealt harshly with her, so Hagar fled from before her. And that is, I think, of all the puzzling statements we've talked about tonight, this for me is the most, because Sarah was a righteous woman. She taught people Torah, or what they knew of the Torah, and went with Abraham on all their travels, a righteous woman. So it's hard for me to think that she would deal harshly with someone. What do you think, Nancy?
Well, I think it is interesting to look at the Hebrew word that's translated here as dealt harshly with.
Mm-hmm.
And the word is answer.
Answer. Oh, okay.
And Sarah answered,
Oh,
and Hagar fled.
okay.
So I'm I'm not exactly sure how they're getting the harshly, maybe because Hagar fled.
Oh,
That
by Hagar's reaction, it was something.
right.
Yeah.
It was some kind of response
Okay. Well, what
that
about this? Maybe Sarah answered her, ever how she answered her, but because Hagar has inflated herself in her own eyes above Sarah, she took it as harsh.
could be.
Maybe Sarah didn't mean it as harsh, but with Hagar's attitude that she seems to be demonstrating here, that she took it as harsh.
And I have heard one rabbi say that, like you said, Sarai was teaching the women of the family Torah. Well, Abram was teaching the men. And what she did was she kicked Hagar out of class.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So it's not like she was beating her or something like that. It wasn't,
Right.
there's nothing to indicate here in the verse what Sarai said, but whatever it was, Hagar ran away.
Yeah. And we're going to leave it there.
Dun dun dun.
Dun,
It's a
dun,
cliffhanger.
dun. Where does she go? What
What
happens to
happens?
Hagar? Will we ever see her again?
Yes.
Yes, I
Spoiler,
think we
yes.
will. Hagar's story does not end here, but well, these 6 verses is, like I said, more questions than answers, but it's
Correct.
challenging and just to make us stop and think, well, Sarah was a righteous woman. How would she deal harshly? And when we stop and really look at again at the Hebrew words, it really puts a different understanding. So, Nancy, what's your takeaway?
Well, I think that maybe my takeaway is beware of impatience.
Mm-hmm.
I think that for me, I need to keep that in the forefront that I need more patience. And waiting 10 years, I think, is a lot of patience.
Yes.
So maybe I can learn that lesson
Yeah.
from this section.
Yes.
What about you?
Well, mine I think is very similar to yours. We get impatient and we want to hurry along God's plan. Abram and Sarah knew God's plan was that they would have a child, but Sarah maybe got impatient, whatever, decided, well, we'll help the plan along. And sometimes it doesn't work out very well when we try to help God with his plan. When we want to impose our idea on how the plan should go instead of, I mean, there are times, yes, we help, but God has a role for us to play in his plans,
Right.
but we don't have the right to alter his plans, so to speak, or like, okay, well, that's a good idea. I'm going to add this little element to it. You need a little help here, God, to get this going. So, uh, just to summarize that, I wrote the risk when we try to help or hurry along God's plan. It,
Yeah.
we're going to see there's ramifications from this.
Yes.
And good intentions don't always bring about good results.
Right.
Okay. Anything else you would like to bring up before we say goodnight?
I think that this is going to get this whole story with Hagar brings us into a whole new section with Ishmael, and there's a lot that's beginning right here, and this is just the beginning of it.
Yes. Spoiler alert, there's an Ishmael coming along. Okay, well, we will say goodnight, Nancy. Thank you for joining me in Sarah's tent, and we'll see you next week.
Good night.
Goodbye.